Hello, and welcome to the Uncensored Journey podcast, a raw, unfiltered guide to truths that matter. We are diving deep, getting real about what it takes to truly transform inside and out. Ready for truth? Ready for transformation? You're in the right spot. I'm Cyndee, and with me, as always, is Gabriela. Now, let's get uncensored.
Thank you, Cyndee. Today, we are joined by an incredible man, Dr. Larry Farwell. Dr. Larry Farwell is a Harvard-educated neuroscientist and the author of the #1 best-selling book, The Science of Creating Miracles, Neuroscience, Quantum Physics, and Living the Life of Your Dreams. Time magazine selected him to the Time 100 Top Innovators of the Century, the Picassos or Einsteins of the 21st century. He has consulted with leading individuals, organizations, and top government leaders and agencies worldwide, including the FBI, the CIA, the U.S. Navy, and the President of the United States. He has been featured on CBS Evening News, ABC World News, CNN, BBC, the New York Times, Time, and major news media worldwide. He invented brain fingerprinting, a scientific technique to detect criminals and terrorists and exonerate the innocent by measuring brainwaves. He invented the first brain-computer interface to communicate directly from the brain to a computer and to control robots and speak through speech synthesizers using brainwaves. His books, retreats, and online courses provide practical techniques for applying this new science to create your own miracles and live the life of your dreams. Based on his groundbreaking scientific research, he weaves together neuroscience, quantum physics, expansion of consciousness, and effective techniques you can use to live a truly extraordinary life. Welcome, Dr. Larry, and thank you for being here.
I'm delighted to be here, Gabriela, Cyndee.
But tell us scientifically, what is a miracle? And are miracles scientifically possible?
All right. Well, that is an excellent question. It's a written book called The Science of Miracles be a good place to start. To begin with, to answer that question, I have to say a little bit about the structure of the universe, the structure of matter from a scientific perspective. Now, at first glance, if I look at this table in front of me, I'm going to on this for just a minute here, but this will become relevant. This table in front of me, you may be able to hear me knocking on it. When I look at it, it appears to be solid and pretty immovable and different from the air around it. However, if you look more closely, you look more scientifically, it's mostly empty space, not solid. It's mostly empty space and molecules moving around very quickly. If you look within the molecules, you'll see atoms. Look within the particles, protons, neutrons, electrons. If you look within those, you'll see quarks. If you look within the quarks to the string theory, you'll see vibrating strings. So this, what appears at first glance to be a solid object, is really atom vibration, vibrating. Einstein coined the term unified field to describe that universal field that vibrates into particle wave phenomena that we experience as the physical universe, like on an ocean. So when we look at a miracle, we would be looking at what could we do was seemingly impossible. It used to be thought that miracles were impossible events. However, in quantum mechanics, anything is possible. Certain things are probable, certain things are highly improbable. Quantum mechanics, probability. I was sitting with my dad. My dad is a nuclear physicist. And I said, "Hey, Dad, anything is possible." He said, "Yes, any magical configuration of quantum particle phenomena is possible. Some are improbable, some are extremely improbable, but anything is possible." I said, "Okay, so it's possible that you and I, all the elementary particles that make up my body, and you come here, and along with enough air to breathe, and we'll carry on this conversation there." And he said, "Yeah, you're right. That is possible." And we were at a restaurant, and he took out a napkin, and wrote down a quick formula, and he calculated the approximate probability that was going to happen. The probability was really low. It didn't happen. He didn't do the conversation. But the point of making an impossible sounding thing like that is, when you look at it scientifically, possible, improbable. Are miracles scientifically possible? Yes, they're scientifically possible. But the next question that immediately arises is, all right, but can we create miracles? And that would have to further scientific research, which we did. All the great spiritual traditions tell us that the inner field of pure consciousness is the same as the conscious unified field that rises into the particle wave phenomena that make up the physical unit. Or in other times and places, they wouldn't have talked about quantum mechanics and the mathematics of all of that, but the universal field of being that gives rise to the universe, the same as the inner field of our own consciousness. In other words, the essential constituent of the universe and the essential constituent of me, I, the self, the essential constituent of you, your own consciousness, those are one and the same, according to all the spiritual traditions. If that is the case, then it stands to reason that we could create an impulse on the level of our consciousness, and that would affect the universe, or it would affect the environment. Now, that is something that wise people have said throughout the ages. If you look at the scriptures from 10,000 years ago, or you look at the last book that came out last week about how to be successful. So you create an impulse on the level of your consciousness, and that moves nature, and then you experience that in your life. It's as if you have a guitar. You pluck a string on a guitar, it sets up a particular resonant frequency, vibrators, and other instruments, environment, but this resonant frequency will vibrate in harmony with that, pick up vibration, and then that propagates. A lot of wise people said that's how we created it, but that hadn't ever been shown in the scientific laboratory. In the scientific laboratory, we had strings of cause and effect in the material world, not the involvement of consciousness. Now, consciousness is necessary in order to understand quantum mechanics, because the fundamental phenomena in mechanics involve an observer. But nobody had shown that we could affect the probability of quantum mechanical events. I think everyone's had an experience like you think, I'd really like it from Cyndee, and the phone rings just then. And it's but you can't say that's a scientific experiment because we don't know the probability. Maybe she would have called anyway. So we do know the probability of particle emission by plutonium. Plutonium is one of the major ingredients of an atomic bomb. My dad was one of the scientists who developed the atomic bomb. So he had plutonium. So we took plutonium and we set up a nuclear physics experiment to measure, to see if we could shift the probability distribution of alpha particle emission by plutonium. Now, why would we want to do that? Actually, first, let me cut to the chase and say, we found that we could create extremely improbable events off the charts in the statistic books with respect to this quantum mechanical process. Now, why do we want to do that? People that I know don't get up in the morning and say, gee, I really wish today I could shift the probability through alpha partition by plutonium. However, what people do get up in the morning and think, I'd really like to have a spectacular, successful career, and have abundance in every level of life, and emotionally, the thing we do desire. And those two, if we can create an improbable event in one quantum mechanical process, what that means is the fundamental mechanics are there to create an improbable event in other phenomena in our life. And that's what a miracle is. So yet miracles are scientific, and we haven't created them. That's what we showed in the laboratory. But people had done research on quantum mechanics and shown that how we make the measurement, how we look, is going to determine what we see. But what we showed on top of that is that we can shift the probability of what we're going to observe, of what we're going to, in effect, create in the universe. So in a very real sense, we did from the level of our consciousness. We set up an impulse, plucking a guitar string on the level of our consciousness, that moves the conscious unified field. And that then we discover that phenomenon in our lives and in our surroundings in the universe. So yes, a miracle are scientifically possible, and we proved that you can in fact create It can create highly improbable events. And if you want to use the word miracle to describe, that's the most scientific way of describing miracle.
Thank you.
Long answer, I had to give you some background before I could directly get to the question.
No, I think that's great. And that's fantastic for our listeners. So how do we create our lives rather than things just happening to us? And how do we do that? And
I'll touch on it a little bit, where I was saying that we set up an inner resonance on the level of our consciousness that I can move the non-unified field, and then for that in our lives. However, in order to really more fully understand that, we have to look at how the brain. So you're 2 years old, you're crawling around on the 1.5 years old, maybe you're crawling around on the floor. So he's got just the wall, just the big leg, not really much to notice. If you touch the hot stove, you have an aha experience. Now there's something important going on. Now the brain is open for reprogramming because there's something important that we need to take note of. This is a significant thing we have to incorporate into our vision of the world, into our experience of how things happen. So these aha experiences open up the brain for reprogramming. And I'll tell you in a minute how we take advantage of that to create our life. When the brain engages in certain activities, cognitive activity, the neurons fire in particular patterns. And we can pick up those patterns by measuring EEG, encephalograph, electroelectricity provided. And there's a particular pattern that takes place when you have this aha moment that opens up the brain for reprogram. And that is called a memory and encoding related multifacet electroencephalographic response, MERR. Moments are how the brain learns, how the brain evolves, how the brain progresses. Moment, not much happens in terms of the brain learning and progressing and evolving. You have, and that opens up the brain for reprogramming. Buddha had his aha experience of reaching enlightenment sitting under the Bodhi, hooked up to brainwaves. I think we would have seen it more. So how do we take advantage of this? And to do that, we need to look at how we create our lives. We carry around within ourselves an inner blueprint that says the baseline of what we are, our safety and value are in life. And something that comes along that seems to be a threat or a detriment to life, it usually is something that seems to be threatening our power, our value, or our safety. And when something uplifts our life, it's generally flipping in one or more or all of those things. So we have an inner blueprint we're carrying around that we're only 74% safe and 85% powerful, 86% valuable, or whatever, it's something less than 100%. The reality is that we're 100% safe, 100% valuable, 100% powerful because who we are is this unconscious which in life that creates the whole universe. So we can take advantage of these miracles. When you have an aha experience, you can use that aha experience to tune into yourself, to tune into what it feels like to be you, to tune into your inner action. That life and that in your life where you experience your represented 100% is powerful. That shifts your inner towards your true truth. Then you create that in you. So there's more to that. What's the toolkit? And that's more question in response to that.
I have a follow-up question to that. So I know this is a little more woo-woo than scientific. In the manifestation communities and stuff, it's this, we create a reality, thoughts become things along those lines. And I'm a big proponent of things happening for us, not to us. So like everything is how the universe is meant for it to happen. So I'm wondering if you think like switching perspective and like switching your mindset to things is like a type of murmur. And if that's something that's maybe less like of a scientific example, but more of like how I'm calling it woo community, like the manifestation community manipulates your scientific experiments into something that works for them. Because for me, I find that helps me change my path and change the way I look at things by just shifting perspective on like bad things. It's like just, oh, it was meant to happen this way and then move on.
Okay, short answer is yes. And again, let's look at creating miracles as an example to illustrate this. So you want to create an improbable event. And it's not the season for apples, and your store down the street doesn't usually carry apples, but you want an apple. So you have this impulse, oh, I really like to have an apple. And you go to work, you make some money, you come home, you drive to the store, and even though it's an improbable event, they don't usually have apples, and it's not apple season. Today they have apples, you buy the apple, and now you have an apple. So you've created an improbable event. Not really what we call a miracle, but probable event. Now, let's say you have a closer attunement to the conscious unified field. So that means your awareness, your consciousness is more powerful. It's having more of an impact on the fundamental reality. And okay, I see your note about echo. It could be that both of you mute yourselves while I'm speaking. That might help. We'll see if that works better. Okay. So you have a little finer attunement with a conscious unified field. Then you can have a thought, oh, I'd really like to have an apple. And a knock comes on the door. It's your best friend, Gabriela. And I just happen to have a basket of apples here. Now, if you have a closer attunement to the conscious unified, you have that faint impulse, oh, I'd really like to have an apple. You're sitting out in your backyard, an apple truck goes by, hits a bump, apple bounces out, lands. If you have a full attunement to the mutually happy impulse on the level of your consciousness, apple, and you get an apple. That's on the level of walking on water and drinking water and wine and so on. All of those have a probability that the configuration of an app is going to be here at its place. Probably levels similar to the probability that my dad the other side, all the elementary particles in our bodies would have come to the other side of the moon. Finite probability that'll happen. How do we create that? We create that. It's the difference to a circumstance between those phenomena. The fundamental difference is the level of consciousness involved. There are a lot of talk and a lot of techniques in the world and even the personal development, but not so world, involving transformation. We can transform our thoughts, ourselves, and our beliefs. Transformation is changing the form of something, and all that has some value. So you have a statue made out of brass, and you change the form of it, and it's a different form statue. Now, transmutation is the idea was base metals into gold. A transmutation is the process that affects the level of your being, not just the level of your thought, emotions, beliefs, etc. And it creates a fundamental shift who is creating the thoughts, attitudes, beliefs, etc. And transformation, thoughts, and your all of this has a value, and a more fundamental value in terms of creating life, the life of your dreams, in terms of manifestation, is process the your experience from one of a more limited consciousness to one of a whole higher level of consciousness. And I'll give you an example. We're going this along the same lines of what your respective perspective on negative experiences or apparent negative experience. I was on a dock, and this was Puget Sound, and out the water connected to the Pacific Ocean, and this way it is forest. I was on my dock with a young woman that I was in, just getting to know, and we'd just been out of my boat. And we were having a wonderful time there in the sunny afternoon on a dock by the lake. I came by, and he said, one of my boats was at the dock, one other was anchored out. And he pointed a boat anchored out and said, when are you going to get rid of that piece of shit boat? I can't stand looking at it. So my immediate response was, all right, best action here, and he clearly deserved it, is I should pick up one of these boat vendors these rubber things that you put between a boat and a dock, and I should throw it and knock the guy out of his kite. That was my first impulsive thought. So I should do that because I took a breath in order to evaluate the circumstance more clearly. And initially, it appeared like this was a guy a threat to my value, to my boat, it's like, it's to me, to my safety. Potentially, he could be a threat to my entire family line throughout the future if he interfered successfully with this woman that I was getting to know. So that felt initially like a really big threat. That actually wasn't. And when I took a breath, I brought in the prefrontal cortex and brought the intellect into the equation. My emotions usually had one response. I brought the clear understanding that, okay, is this guy actually a threat? And it turned out, as I think you clearly read, is that in boat had nothing to do with me. It had much to do with my boat. It simply has to do with what his opinion. It was not a threat at all to me. So I had an all experience. I was triggered, right? But my options were to react to that, or to first of all evaluate it correctly, and then have an appropriate response. The appropriate response was ignore the guy and enjoy spending from it wasn't, and that was a shift in my consciousness, because what happens what I did is I first evaluated really a threat, and then I used that impetus, holding the awareness, to tune into what does it really feel like to be Dr. Larry Farwell. What is it really? Who am I? What is of my own being, air vibration, the resonant breathing is to myself. I tuned into myself, tuned into the conscious unified field, and then that enhances your experience of your true self, which is 100% powerful. And as a result, throughout the rest of your life, you're radiating from a higher blueprint, a more true to you. A lot of the techniques that I think correspond to what you've been talking about have to do with quickly bending the circumstance and thereby shifting your perspective, shifting your experience. But the most important part of it is that it shifts your consciousness. Hence, people are advocates of the prefrontal cortex, the intellect, over the emotions. And he was, it's too emotional. My amygdala code. So it's not a matter of being too emotional. It's a matter of correctly informing the emotion. If you're being chased by a tiger, it's actually very adaptive to have your response, to have the fight or flight response. If the saber-toothed tiger is you should adapt to have an anger response. But if somebody doesn't like your hairdo, then those are not a precondition for, those aren't really a thing. Or it doesn't like your boat. Those aren't a condition where it's necessary to have a fight or flight response. It's a situation where you can use that trigger to tune in more to yourself. And with respect to the relationship, the intellect, and there's some advocates where you've got to use your intellect and overpower the emotions. So you have an impulse to go knock a guy out of his product, thing to do. And your emotions are guided by information provided by your intellect. If you give your emotions the right information, they'll respond. It's a job to cross your emotions with your intellect. It's like my daughter used to come into the house sometime, and you take her pink jacket off and throw it on the floor. Now, I could have said, all right, young lady, you have rules in this house. We hang up our logo on the floor. That would have been not much fun and not much real learning. But what I would say was, Tira, this is pretty interesting. Are we having decorating philosophy? We're having rugs? And she'd say, all right, I got to hang up my coat. Or Tira would say, I want an ice cream cone. This is very interesting. Tira wants an ice cream. I wonder if she's going to have the social skills to ask in such a way that she actually gets an ice cream. And she goes, how do we have to have that? The point is that guiding your emotions is like guiding a young child emotionally. You can guide and entice and inspire your emotional system, rather than try to beat it in submission using the intellect. And again, in this case, that's a response from a fender, or for that matter, an anchor at this guy in the kayak. I recognized that it wasn't an appropriate response, and the situation became amusing. Some guy comes by, and it's, if anything, certainly not a threat. It's humorous, and we can go back to enjoying our day in the sun here. So that is how the brain and how we can get.
I love that story. You mentioned it in the book, and every time it gets me. Now,
I didn't read books. You could in this person. However, I decided to, and it turned out that it's no use to get the point.
Exactly. The easier you could make it for people to grasp it, the better. So how does, we talked a little bit about how we could take advantage of the murmur moments and the intense experiences, but how can we support the brain to learn to favor those murmur moments? And how can we take advantage of it? How can we compound the murmur moments so that we're giving the brain and our energy field what they need to be in full harmony and congruence?
First of all, the advantage of the murmur moments come by doing what I call transmutation trigger. Something triggers you. Instead of shooting the messenger, I want this experience to happen again, so I'm going to stop this person from ever saying or doing something. Breath. Tune into her true nature. Tune into what it really feels like to be Gabriela, and tune into the inner resonance of who you are. That it's very close to the conscientified field, and then come out in life from that perspective, from that aspect. Fundamentalists don't have to be negative. They can be positive. I mean, when you touch the hot stove, you get an aha experience. You get a murmur moment. You touch a babe or a hot guy that you're interested in or attracted to, you can get a murmur moment from that. The positive murmur moments also open up your program. And there are ways you can create positive murmur moments in your life. You don't have to wait for them to come along. One way that I mentioned in the book is to jump out of an airplane without a parachute. It's guaranteed to the present, to bring your awareness to the present moment. Now, the way you do this is you take a parachute and you throw it out with a little parachute attached to it, so it falls at about the same speed as a person falling at terminal velocity. Then you dive out after it, you fly over to it, you grab it, you put it on, you pull the ripcord, your parachute opens before you hit the ground. And it is absolutely going to create for you. There are some, I see shaking your head, Cyndee. There are some downsides to that experience. One is it's illegal in the United States, so don't do it in the United States. The other is that it's not the kind of thing that you can really practice until you get it right. You really have to get it right there. You don't second chance. And when your chute opens, and I say this from personal experience, you can have difficulties landing and other things there are other things you can do that are much safer and equally effective to create positive murmur moments. One of those is to tell the truth. Now, most people are pretty honest, and you say, tell the truth. I said, of course, I'm going to got to turn my, people say, I'm honest. I tell the truth. What I'm talking about is often if there's something about what we're talking about, some little thing, and actually, spoiler alert, is actually not a little thing that we don't want to include in what we're saying. That's something to take a look at. If somebody asks us about something or we're talking about something, most of it we can talk about, and there's something we want to hide. We're only as sick as our secrets. When there's something we don't want to say, that part of the truth creates a murmur moment when you actually express it. Because what if people get upset? What if people don't like me? What if people judge me? And yet, what you'll find is that when you say that thing that you have some hesitation to say, that you have some impetus to hide, instead of people thinking you're horrible, people feel the genuineness. They feel the authenticity. They feel you're really present with them. And they have a very positive response to that. telling the truth can, in fact, give you a moment and open the brain up for reprogramming and give you an experience of being more in tune with yourself and more in tune with other people. There's a lot of talk these days about being vulnerable. And so really, I understand the concept that people have, but I would give a very, that. If what you're doing is what I call image management, where you say, okay, I'm with this person, these people. What's going to make them think positive? What's going to make them think I'm the great thing since sliced bread? Okay, I see that. Now I'm going to try and act like that way, try and talk that. That it's exhausting. For another, people pick on lack of, they're not impressed when what you're really doing is trying to do what they're going to be impressed by or what they're going to like, and then trying artificially to be that way. Be yourself, letting yourself shine. Well, look at it. People who rest with will love it. Some people will prefer another kind of person. They'll be off to both of it. In Kung Fu, I taught Kung Fu. I've taught Kung Fu for many years. And I'll tell students they're about to go into a Kung Fu fight. All right, go out there and show your true self. Let people see who you really are. Expose your true self. I don't say, oh, go out there and be vulnerable. Because it's really not the thing. When you're trying to fake it, we're actually vulnerable because we're at the effect of everybody else's opinions. We're trying to manipulate some others. Whereas when you're true to yourself, and this is my truth, this is who I am, then what happens is you're invulnerable because whatever, let the you think what they like. People can judge or not judge, whatever. You're really invulnerable when you're more true to yourself. So what most people describe as being vulnerable, I would actually describe as being invulnerable. And that is something that takes advantage of these murmur moments to create an evolutionary leap forward for yourself, to create transmutation in your life. That address what you.
Yeah, that is very helpful. Yes. Speak your truth. Very powerful. I agree.
I think there's one key in that. Yes, speak your truth. Yes, be true to yourself. Yes, be open. On the other hand, it's not all about you. Not all about you. So just be wise, jumping out. If we're going to express something, is this a context where the people here are actually going to be interested in that? There's no such thing as being very self-expressed, but just whatever pops into one's head pops. That's not as evolutionary. So it's good to use some judgments, some social judgments, some social awareness as to whether this level of openness is something which resonates with the current people in the current situation. What else?
Awesome. Thank you. I have some specific questions about your book. If we can just shift gears a little bit. And is that cool?
That's totally cool.
Awesome. All right. In your book, you compare appreciating the universe to enjoying a concert and emphasizing the complexity of vibrations and frequencies. Could you elaborate that a little bit further and on this metaphor and maybe explain it in a less scientific way? So dumb it down so that we could all get the full understanding.
Yes. All right. We all have within ourselves an inner resonance. Again, it's like you pluck a guitar string. It sets up a vibration at a particular resonant frequency. Other instruments in the environment vibrate similar resonant frequency. And then you get a harmony, a symphony. But actually, I guess they don't have guitars in a symphony. You get a concert, a jug band music concert, or whatever it is. You have different instruments vibrating in harmony in a way that is mutually supportive. Certain people, when some people walk into the room, you feel uplifted. You feel a resonance on the energetic level, even before they say or do anything, even aside from what they look like, their physical structure. You pick up a resonance. Oh yeah, I feel enlivened by this. And I just feel inspired. I feel some harmony. I feel some love. I feel some openness on the level of the energetic resonance of what that person has and radiates. Now, some other people will enter the room and you'll have a different response. It'll be something that does not resonate. Enjoying the vibrations and frequencies in the people and places around you is a lot like enjoying the vibrations and frequencies in a concert that you enjoy. If vibrations and frequencies are about what it sounds like with a chainsaw, that might not be something you'd resonate with and something you should gravitate away from. Well, there are some people that feel like a chainsaw. There's some people that feel like a symphony or jug band music or whatever you like. I like to sing and play guitar, so I like singer-songwriter kinds of music, but different things, people, places, circumstances. And when you're around somebody who really resonates with you, when you're true to yourself, you just be yourself, and they feel inspired and uplifted. They'll nourish. They just be themselves. You feel inspired. So we create a hologram between and among ourselves that is mutually nourishing to everybody who participates.
It's like intuition, a gut feeling.
Yes. Okay. Intuition.
Give it to us. Let's hear it.
All right. The intellect shouts, the emotions scream, and intuition whistle. Our intuitive sense of the universe, our intuitive sense of people, events, phenomena, is at a cellular level. It's closer to a unified field, this quiet level, very intuitive level. And what I've discovered about the really great science that I've been is that all of them is, and Einstein talked about this as well, the way we scientists discover how nature works is by picking up intuitively on the energetic dynamics of how nature works. And then we use intellect as a secondary tool to explain that, the math to it, put the words to it, systematize it, create theories and so on. But the way scientists really attune to figure out how nature is working is by tuning in on the intuitive level. Same thing, of course, with people. We find out all the details about them, but the way that person is on the intuitive level. And that's a more powerful way of knowing, more powerful than the intellect or the emotion. What has that? Intuition is more intimate. It's closer to the conscious unified field, closer. So developing your intuition, the experience is highly valuable. And as you start to trust your intuition more, it becomes more enhanced. Experience you have as well. Where a situation come along and I have a deep intuitive sense, oh yeah, okay, I should go this way. And then I look at all the facts that I know from the intellect perspective, and there's this reason why I should be going this way instead. Sometimes I let the intellect or which I go with later discover that was not the best choice. When I tune into my intuition, even if I don't yet understand on an intellectual level why it is resonating to the end, I go that way with that person, that situation, that decision, that path of action. It always turns out to be better.
Awesome. Thank you. In your book, you discuss the ineffectiveness of affirmations and positive thinking techniques. Can you give us maybe some alternative methods for successful manifesting or successful miracle making? Or
Yes.
Thank you.
First of all, manifestation takes place spontaneously. It's not like we'd set, okay, step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, miracle. Or so for that superficial, we'd all put a list on our mirror, next to our mirror. We'd look at it every morning, and within a day or two, we'd all be billionaires. We'd have huge impact on the entire world. We'd have ideal relationships. We'd have all kinds of fulfillment, and everything would be perfect. And writing those things down about saying it doesn't create that effect very effectively. Why? What are the actual parameters that are important? There are several. One of them, the depth, we've talked about that a little bit a few minutes ago. If we have a high level of consciousness, if we have a very faint impulse on the intuitive level, very close to the conscious unified field, that's a powerful effect. And that means a lot of people who are trying harder actually are taking us in the wrong direction, the opposite direction for manifestation. Because the harder you focus on something, the more you keep your mind on the active level. It doesn't set up to this divided consciousness. It doesn't set up a quiet resonance on the level of the conscious unified field. So our techniques, affirmations, then involve from the mind harder trying to push something harder, factor, clarity of vision. Now, clarity of vision is not the same thing as specificity. No, I'll tell you what, we can say, okay, I really admit, okay, what if you get the $1 million by robbing a bank? You got your $1 million, you spend the rest of prison, $1 million sits there, and hang on. That's probably not so good. Did you ever do the movie, I think it was called, think about the earlier one where the devil was male. This guy had some wishes from the devil. Every time he made a wish, the devil would exactly meet the words of the way he expressed his wish, but actually be the opposite of what he really wanted. The thing that we want is $1 million. That's not what we actually want. What do we actually want? We want an experience. The universe is not a thing. The universe is an experience. Life is not a series of events. It's a series of experiences. So what do we truly do? We want the experience of freedom, to be able to go where we want, when we want. Do we want the experience of being able to be generous to care about, or causes that we want to further? Do we want $1 million so we can impress people with how rich we are and how many therapies and so what we're working for is clarity of not the concrete thing that you think will give you the experience, but envisioning, setting up resonance of himself. That's another factor is because the harder you try, the farther you are away from this field of silence of conscious field. Techniques for manifestations be effortless. What happens is the mechanics of how manifestation take place is this. You have creating impulse, very faint impulse on the very quiet to the conscious unified field. And then you let go. You do not get to the conscious unified by holding one forward or stream. Thereby, you have that faint impulse and then let go. What's up? That's a conscious unified field, your unbounded consciousness, and that is enlivened that impulse that you've had, and that moves the conscious unified field, that moves nature, and then you discover that in your life. So effortlessness is important. Better to do. Another thing is important because if you support nature, it's you. If something is in tune with the real you, something is in tune with the conscious unified field, it will gain that support. My initial response is maybe I should take a boat anchor or a boat fender and knock this guy out of his kayak when he was insulting my boat. That was not in tune with nature. It wasn't in tune with me. So when I experience a quieter level of myself or what I truly desire, something very different from that is to be on the level. And same with anyone else. When you experience something that's in tune with yourself, your true self, your highest self, it's in tune with nature, and it's going to be something that's harmonious and life supporting for everyone throughout the universe. So support of nature in manifestation, in obtaining your desires, in creating your desires in the universe is very important. And as you experience something at a subtler and subtler level of yourself, it'll be more and more in tune with yourself and more in tune with nature and more powerful. And ultimately, if you're at a fully enlightened state, your desires and nature's desires are entirely harmonious, are the same. So those are the basic factors. And anything you can do to cultivate your level of consciousness, your meditation techniques, transcendental meditation techniques to raise your level of consciousness, yoga, things that refine your physiology, eating well, being in harmonious environments, being around people who have a harmonious influence, who have an uplifting and enlightening influence. All of the things you can do that help you to raise your level of consciousness are going to increase your ability to spontaneously manifest desire and, as my book title says, create the life of your dreams.
It's a little like ordering from Amazon. Instead of just sitting in the mirror every day saying, I want this book, I want this book, I want this book, you order the book from Amazon and it just shows up. You forget it, you order it and forget about it, and it just comes to your house.
Yes, that's brilliant. A very effortless process and a very powerful process. You don't put in the order, you don't get the book.
It's right. It's interesting that we have so much faith in Amazon, but not ourselves.
Well, that's brilliant. Yeah. Add more to your intuition, and as you gain more familiarity with this experience, of course, your faith in yourself increases.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. I was just curious too to know more about the blueprint stuff. It said you mentioned that we possess a limited blueprint that doesn't truly reflect our reality, but I was hoping that you can maybe simplify that and explain it to me like I was 5.
Okay.
Simple terms.
All right. So you remember that I talked about plucking a guitar string. You want a guitar that looks much like this one. And you pluck the guitar string, it sets up vibrating particular resonance. That's a vibration. And other vibrators similar. So we carry around within ourselves an inner vision, an inner experience of who we experience ourselves to be. And that, for most of us, is limited. We have a resonance within ourselves. I'm only 75% value, 64% safe, and 50% powerful. What is something less than 100%? So we set up that resonance on the level of our consciousness. That's what we radium to the universe. That's the string we're plucking. So then what happens is that the universe delivers to us what we've been radiating. And now, after a few years, we have solid, concrete evidence from externally, not just internally. We have this evidence that says, yeah, I'm really not entirely safe. I'm 30% unsafe, unvalued, powerful. So when you can that inner blueprint, move it closer to our blueprint where we're 100% valuable, is through these murmur moments. When something gets to you, where you can create value, wanted or predicted, you have an aha experience. You have a memory encoded related multifaceted electroencephalographic response. You have murmur brain that opens your net for reprogramming. The way to reprogram more tune with your true blueprint is to tune in just quietly into who you truly, tune into what it feels like to be you, what that inner is, what that quiet intuitive vibration is. It's very close to the conscious unified field, and you'll hear that level of experience. Just talk about experience that level where you're 100% safe, value, powerful. That becomes more fused in the nature mind. And one caveat on that, that is when a murmur moment comes along, you do want to do it accurately. In other words, if the problem is that if you actually are being chased by a bear, it's not time to tune in subtly or feeling of safety. It's a bit to respond to the situation in an appropriate way. The time to use this transmutation trigger check of tuning into the levels. When something is actually a threat, actually it's on fire. The building's on fire. You want to use your legs and on the building.
Excellent. Thank you for that. You suggest the possibility of perceiving and interacting with subtle realms like auras and celestial beings. How can we develop and enhance that ability? In simple terms.
All right. We'll go with simple terms here. Okay. I'll put this a little bit in scientific perspective. It's simple terms, scientific perspective. Before we had scales measure our weight, we had an experience of gravity and we had some knowledge of how gravity works. We knew not to off of 100. We didn't have something, we didn't scale to measure that or measure the gravitational attraction to the earth, but we knew not to jump off on. When we lie down in bed at night, we're not going to float off into the atmosphere. We can experience something we haven't yet developed secondary instruments to measure. There was a time when we had no secondary instruments that would measure X-rays, but X-rays still existed and they still had an impact. We were bombarded by X-rays from the sun, for example. So there are phenomena that we don't yet have secondary instruments to measure, but that we can experience from our system. Many people report perceiving and interacting with subtler levels of creation, like beings, like celestial beings who have a body that appears to be made out of something subtler than this material this body's got. Or will have particular qualities, energetic qualities that perceive these people they perceive that yet have. So my working hypothesis is just as this visible bodies made up of is a certain vibrations in the conscious unified field on the level of protons, neutrons, electrons, the elementary particles that we know about, and we're at the electric force and field and The strong force and the weak force also only take place in supplements. Though they're quantized, make my working hypothesis is they're quantized field that make up these cellular things like auras to the celestial beings and astral bodies and so on. They're just a more of fine material. Now, we don't yet have scientific research that demonstrate that. In the laboratory, we do have experience of many people that these phenomena are of experience. We think of experience that have shown secondary instruments to measure it doesn't exist. And those same people would say X-rays didn't exist until we could measure them with scarce. With respect to how to enhance your abilities to perceive subtle things, it doesn't necessarily have to be subtler levels of error or being or whatever. It's to be subtle people that you know, or subtle intuitive sense of what way of moving in my life is going to more be an important way to do that. Is take advantage of these murmur moments and tune into that level of yourself, which is itself the subject that keeps your consciousness in your and all of the other things that refine the function of the nervous system. Meditation, or kinds of meditation that actually reach the conscious unified field, like transcendental meditation, anything like yoga that refine the function of the nervous system, getting rest, being in enhanced environments with high vibration people. All these things will expand your and allow you to perceive levels. Okay? And that the discovery of what actually exists at these deeper levels is a phenomenon. Where I can say, okay, here it's going to you'll discover as you evolve all of the things that is possible for human beings to see. And someday I think we will have secondary instruments that measure these subtler phenomena to the degree that they exist. So something we biggest instrument in the universe for reality is within our heads. The human nervous system can experience all kinds of things beyond what we yet have instruments to measure. When we progress, I think of instruments to measure some of these subtler things. In the meantime, we can enhance our ability to experience subtler levels of ourselves, other people, by both. And after I did this research with my dad, I spent the next on the unified field, spent the next 20 years developing techniques to enhance people's level of consciousness so their capability to create the life of their dreams becomes enhanced. And all applied in all brains once are ways to increase one's attunement to the conscious unified field and there to create a great impact in creating the life that you desire.
Awesome. Thank you. All of the research you've done over all of these years, what are some of the most surprising or counterintuitive findings that you've encountered on the power of consciousness?
Something which is fundamentally intuitive to the way we were all is fundamental realization of quantum mechanics that the observer must be observed and in a grace. Now, we were all brought up in the Newtonian materialist paradigm. It's like you have a bunch of atoms, molecules, and things. The Newtonian world had forces and objects. And if you knew exactly where all the linear balls are, and know what direction they're moving, you can predict infinitely into the future where they're all going to go. And so it was thought in the Newtonian world, the materialist paradigm, that if we just knew precisely enough where all the particles and things were, we could predict into the future. It didn't make any difference. We just come along and look at it. What came about with quantum mechanics is that we discovered that what we see depends on how we look. You look at the system in such a way as to observe particles, and you get particles. You look in such a way as to observe waves, you get waves. So that was extremely counterintuitive. Now, people get studied with, so I was 12 years old at the time. We went to Denmark for a year, Niels Bohr Institute. I didn't really understand the physics, but I did like Niels Bohr. He was very kind and wise. People like Niels Bohr and Werner Heisenberg, they would go on long walks late into the night with each other saying, the rug's been pulled out from under what we thought was science. Here we thought we could predict everything mechanically. The whole universe works like giant clockwork. Now we're discovering that when consciousness enters the equation, that's when things really happen. That's when these infinite probabilities of quantum mechanics collapse into a material phenomenon. That happens when consciousness enters the picture. So that was extremely counterintuitive, and something that was counterintuitive to the material paradigm, but not counterintuitive to people who have been using their intuition and have been creating their lives on the subtle consciousness level, was that we can actually choose from among these infinite possibilities that are there in the quantum mechanical universe. We can actually create improbable events. That's counterintuitive if you are steeped in the materialist Newtonian tradition, which really no longer fits reality now that we have quantum mechanics and relativity physics. For people who are intuitive, it makes perfect sense. And in fact, we were able to demonstrate in a scientific laboratory that we really can create miracles, you can create improbable events. It's just it really was a surprise or counterintuitive to a lot of wise intuitives.
Thank you so much. And one last question. I think everybody wants to know, the woman on the dock, how'd that turn out?
The woman on the dock, it turned out very for some period of time. We became quite close with each other. We didn't actually end up getting married, riding off into the sunset.
Darn, I was hoping for a sunset ending. Thank you so very much for being with us today, Dr. Larry. Where can people find you?
Dr. Larry Farwell, com. It's my website. And from there, you'll find a lot of other links.
And don't forget to pick up his book, The Signs of Creating Miracles. It's very interesting. I've actually read it myself and looking forward to learning more and more. So with that, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us this week. Please subscribe on all platforms. And you can follow us on Instagram and TikTok at The Uncensored Journey. You can find me at The Worth Warrior, and you can find Gabriela at Phoenix Medicine. Until next week, bye.